What if I told you that Donald Trump just handed the Democratic Party their biggest gift of the year, and he did it on purpose? Curious. On Sunday, March 8th, 2026, President Trump posted on Truth Social, and the message sent shockwaves through Washington. He wrote, and I'm paraphrasing, "I, as president, will not sign other bills until the Save America Act is passed. Not the watered-down version. Go for the gold." Surprised? That's right. The President of the United States just threatened to freeze his own legislative agenda unless Congress bends to his will. And the reaction? Republicans went pale. Democrats started clapping. Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia said, and this is a direct quote, "If the president is refusing to pass his own agenda, given his agenda, that's probably a good thing." Chuckles. Senator Angus King of Maine said with a straight face, "I guess he's not going to be signing many more bills." That's how strange this situation has gotten. Stay with me, because this is one of the most bizarre political moments of Trump's second term, and it has massive consequences for every American voter. So what exactly is the Save America Act? Let's break it down. SAVE stands for Safeguard American Voter Eligibility. The core idea sounds simple on the surface. Only American citizens should vote in American elections. And honestly, most Americans agree with that statement in principle. But the devil, as always, is in the details. Here is what the bill actually requires. Number one, proof of citizenship to register. To register to vote in a federal election, you would need to show documentary proof that you are a U.S. citizen. We're talking a passport, a birth certificate, or a government-issued ID that confirms citizenship. Not just any ID, citizenship-specific documents. Here's the problem. According to State Department data, 47% of Americans, nearly half, do not have a valid U.S. passport, and getting one costs over $130. Democrats are calling this a modern-day poll tax. Number two, photo ID required to vote. The bill requires a photo ID at the polls, a driver's license, state ID, military ID, tribal ID, or passport. If you show up without one, you vote provisionally, and you have 3 days to return with proper ID. Otherwise, your vote doesn't count. Number three, mail-in ballots severely restricted. Under Trump's preferred gold version of the bill, mail-in voting would only be allowed for military personnel, people with documented illness, disability, or documented travel. That means tens of millions of Americans who currently vote by mail would lose that option. Number four, name discrepancy rules. This one disproportionately affects women. If your name on your citizenship document doesn't match your voter registration, say because you got married and changed your last name, you'd need to submit an affidavit explaining the change. Critics say this creates unnecessary bureaucratic hurdles that will stop legitimate voters. And Trump now wants to add even more to this bill. No transgender athletes in women's sports, and no gender-affirming care for minors. He's bundling multiple culture war issues into one voting bill and daring the Senate to reject it. The bill passed the House on February 218 to 213. Nearly every Republican voted yes. Nearly every Democrat voted no. Now it sits in the Senate. And that's where everything gets complicated. Now, here is where this story gets genuinely fascinating, because the people who should be most upset about Trump's ultimatum, the Democrats, are actually thrilled. Why? Let me explain. Trump has said he will not sign any bills until the SAVE Act passes. Think about what that means in practice. The government still needs to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Republicans are trying to push major budget legislation. There are infrastructure proposals, housing bills, trade legislation. The entire Republican legislative agenda for 2026 is sitting in a pile, waiting for Trump's signature. And Trump just said, none of it gets signed until I get my voter ID bill. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer immediately posted on X, formerly Twitter, that Democrats would, quote, not help pass the SAVE Act under any circumstances, calling it Jim Crow 2.0. And then he essentially dared Trump, fine, if you won't sign bills, then there will be total legislative gridlock, so be it. Senator Warnock of Georgia, one of the most prominent voices on voting rights, couldn't hide his satisfaction. His message was clear. Trump threatening to freeze his own agenda is basically doing Democrats' work for them. And here's the political math that makes Democrats smile even wider. The SAVE Act needs 60 votes in the Senate to overcome a Democratic filibuster. Republicans only have 53 seats. They need 7 Democrats to cross the aisle. That is not happening. Schumer has made it crystal clear. 0 Democratic votes for this bill. 0. So Trump has essentially set a condition that everyone in Washington knows cannot be met as the Senate currently operates. The only way forward? Either kill the filibuster, which even many Republicans don't want, or watch Trump's threat slowly collapse. Democrats are sitting back, arms folded, smiling. They don't have to do anything. Trump has locked himself in his own room and thrown away the key. While Democrats are cheering, the Republican caucus is in full damage control mode. And the reason why reveals some deep fractures within Trump's own party. Senate Majority Leader John Thune of South Dakota is the man responsible for getting Republican legislation across the finish line. And right now, he is caught between two impossible choices. On one side, Donald Trump, who is posting on Truth Social daily demanding the SAVE Act passes immediately in full with zero compromises. Trump told Republican lawmakers directly, "We're going for the gold. I will not sign a watered-down version." On the other side, the cold, hard math of the Senate. Thune knows what everyone in Washington knows. The SAVE Act cannot pass with 60 votes. Democrats are a unified wall of opposition. Even getting 60 Republican senators is impossible. There are only 53. So what are Republicans' options? Option 1, the talking filibuster. Under current Senate rules, Republicans could force Democrats to physically stand on the Senate floor and speak continuously to block the bill. Once Democrats stop talking, Republicans could pass it with 51 votes. This is called a talking filibuster. And Trump loves this idea. The problem, Thune himself warned, it's much more complicated and risky than people are assuming. It would eat up weeks of Senate floor time. It has never successfully broken Democratic will before, and there's no guarantee it works. Option 2, eliminate the filibuster entirely. Trump has called for nuking the 60-vote threshold altogether. But here's the thing. Republicans like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski have said they will not vote to eliminate the filibuster. Without their votes, this option dies. In fact, Trump himself, when pressed by NBC News, seemed to acknowledge the reality. So in order to get it, you're going to need Democrat votes. That's the president admitting his own bill might be impossible to pass under current rules. Option 3, budget reconciliation. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana proposed sneaking the SAVE Act through the budget reconciliation process, which only needs 51 votes. But reconciliation is restricted to tax and spending matters. Election law experts and Senate parliamentarians have repeatedly said election bills cannot survive the Byrd bath, the strict rules governing what qualifies for reconciliation. And there's a fourth problem no one is talking about loudly. Not every Republican is on board. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska has explicitly said she opposes the bill, arguing that imposing new federal voting requirements so close to elections would actually harm election integrity by forcing states to scramble without resources. So Thune is trapped. He's trying to reassure Trump that progress is happening while privately telling colleagues that the path forward is, in his own words, unclear. Multiple Republican senators went on record Monday hoping Trump would quietly abandon his pledge to block all legislation. Senator Rick Scott said he supports Trump but is banking on an exception for Homeland Security funding. Others are praying Trump's Truth Social post was just heat-of-the-moment rhetoric. The Republican Party is publicly united and privately panicking. Let's talk about the Senate filibuster, because this is the single most important piece of the puzzle, and it's one that most casual news viewers don't fully understand. The Senate filibuster is a procedural rule that requires 60 votes, not a simple majority of 51, to pass most legislation. It was designed to force bipartisan cooperation. If you can't convince at least some members of the opposing party to support your bill, it doesn't pass. Right now, Republicans have 53 Senate seats. To pass the SAVE Act, they need 60 votes. That means they need 7 Democrats to vote yes. Every single Democratic senator has said they will vote no. The only way around this is 1, convince 7 Democrats to change their votes. Not happening. 2, force a talking filibuster that physically exhausts Democrats until they give up. Risky, time-consuming, and has never worked. 3, change the Senate rules to eliminate the filibuster and pass the bill with 51 votes. This requires all 53 Republicans to agree. At least 2, Murkowski and Collins, are not guaranteed. And most Senate veterans are deeply reluctant to eliminate a rule that protects the minority party, knowing Republicans could be in the minority again someday. 4, use reconciliation, legally questionable and likely to be ruled out of order. So Trump is standing in front of a wall, punching it with his fist and demanding it fall. The wall isn't moving. Now, why does this matter beyond just this one bill? Because if Trump genuinely refuses to sign legislation, including the DHS funding bill, the bipartisan housing bill, and other must-pass items, the entire United States government faces a slowdown. Federal agencies go unfunded, bipartisan deals collapse, the Republicans who control Congress look incompetent, and all of it becomes the GOP's problem heading into the 2026 midterms. Let's play out the two scenarios. If the SAVE Act passes, this would be the most sweeping change to federal voting law in decades. Every single state would be required to demand proof of citizenship before registering voters. Millions of people who currently vote without a passport or birth certificate would have to scramble to find documents they may not have. Democratic concerns center on three groups. First, low-income Americans who lack passports and may have lost their birth certificates. Second, women who have changed their surnames due to marriage. Third, elderly citizens, particularly in rural communities, who have voted for decades but may not have updated documentation. Republicans counter that these concerns are overstated. They argue that photo ID is required for far more routine activities: boarding a plane, buying alcohol, checking into a hotel. And that election integrity requires knowing who is casting ballots. They also note that the Heritage Foundation has documented over 1,600 proven cases of voter fraud since 1982. Critics respond that 1,600 cases out of billions of votes cast over 4 decades is a vanishingly small number, and that a recent Michigan study found just 15 apparent non-citizens cast ballots in 2024 out of 5.7 million total votes. The debate comes down to this: how do you weigh the risk of voter fraud against the risk of voter suppression? That is genuinely one of the hardest questions in American democracy. If the SAVE Act fails, Trump faces a choice. Does he actually follow through on his pledge and refuse to sign legislation, even critical bills? If he does, he risks his own agenda, his party's approval ratings, and potentially a government funding crisis. Or does he quietly walk back his pledge, sign the bills that need to be signed, and accept defeat on the SAVE Act? If Trump backs down, it would be seen as a major political defeat, the kind that emboldens both Democrats and internal Republican critics who already question his legislative strategy. Either way, the 2026 midterm elections, in which all 435 House seats and a third of the Senate are up for grabs, are now deeply entangled with this fight. Trump himself told House Republicans that passing the SAVE Act would, in his words, guarantee the midterms. He believes that forcing Democrats to stand against voter ID, which polls show around 80% of Americans support in some form, is a winning political issue. Democrats believe that making millions of voters afraid they'll lose their ballot access is an even bigger motivator heading into November. The question now: who blinks first? So here's where we stand today, March 10th, 2026. Trump has drawn a line in the sand. Democrats are daring him to stand on it. Republicans are desperately hoping he steps back before the whole floor collapses. The Save America Act is either going to reshape American elections for a generation or become the hill that Trump's second-term agenda died on. One thing is certain: this story is moving fast. New developments are breaking by the hour. If you found this breakdown valuable, do 3 things right now. 1, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who want straight news analysis. 2, subscribe and turn on notifications. We're going to cover every development in this story as it unfolds. 3, tell me in the comments, do you support the SAVE Act? Should voting require proof of citizenship? I want to hear your take. I'll see you in the next video.